All right, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us today. Just a quick sound check. Is everyone able to hear us? If you can just write yes in the chat queue, that'd be great. Or if you can't hear us, actually rather just write no. If you can hear us, we'll assume so. Okay, awesome. Thank you. Okay, great. So my name is Kelly Farber. I'm CEA Student Marketing Manager. We're so excited to be presenting today to help you guys prepare for your students' upcoming Study Abroad program. Today we have our Student Advising Supervisor, our Director of Student Affairs, and our Academic Affairs Coordinator to help present all this great information for you. Just a couple house cleaning items to get us through. For the best experience for everyone, we do ask that you guys keep your mics muted. That will allow best sound quality. If you have any questions, please feel free to use the chat feature, which we see many of you already are. We do have several people monitoring the chat function, and they will hand over their the questions that you guys ask in. At the end, we'll leave some time to answer those questions. Anything that we don't get to today in terms of questions, we will send out a complete transcript at the end of this week for your reference, and we will also send out the recording of the webinar as well. So we do just remind everybody that this is a live webinar. We are all here today, and if you do have questions, chat them in. And with that, we'll get started with today's agenda items. So today we're going to be talking about an introduction to CEA resources. We'll go over a quick academic overview, how to plan for departure, what country entry requirements might be needed for your student's program, your student's health and safety, what our emergency protocols are, cell phones and how to stay connected abroad. We'll talk about quick packing tips and then talk about life on location and what to expect with that as well. For those of you that don't know who CEA is, we'll do a quick introduction to that as well. CEA stands for Cultural Experiences Abroad, but we do just go by CEA Study Abroad. We were founded in 1997, and we are a study abroad partner. We partner with both universities around the U.S., internationally, and of course our students and their families preparing for upcoming programs and academic internships and different things like that that we do abroad. Our biggest goal is to just help as many students as possible have the abroad experience, whether that's through studying or interning. And we do have some recent studies that prove study abroad has benefits that go beyond college years. Things like career benefits, higher starting salaries, and for students becoming more valuable to prospective employers. So we all really value the international experience. We're all very passionate about it here at CEA, and we just want to help as many students have that experience as possible. In terms of your contacts at CEA, from now until departure, your student has their CEA site specialist to help them gather information, answer questions, and then of course we have our Director of Student Affairs to answer additional resources or answer additional questions as well. And of course, you all have your family Facebook support groups. We have our emails and our family blog, and you can reach out to us at any time via phone or email if you have questions throughout this process. So with that, I will hand it off to Ashley, who is our Academic Affairs Coordinator, to talk about our academic structure.
Hello all, I'm Ashley Roberts, CEA's Academic Coordinator. On this slide, we will review the different program options available to students while studying abroad. It is important for you to understand which program your student enrolls into, as each vary considerably. CEA has 4 academic program structures. The first program option is the Study Center program. In this option, students will enroll into courses at one of CEA's 9 study centers. All courses will be transcribed by CEA's School of Record, the University of New Haven of West Haven, Connecticut. The second option available is the Foreign Partner program, which is actually the third image on the slide. Students in this program will take all courses directly with one of CEA's many foreign partner institutions. In this program option, students will receive 1 transcript for all courses taken at the foreign partner institutions. The third option available is the hybrid program, which is actually the second image on the slide. In this program, students will take courses both at one of CEA's 9 study centers, as well as a foreign partner institution in the host city. Students completing this program will receive one transcript from the University of New Haven for all courses taken at the Study Center, and a separate transcript for all courses taken at the foreign partner institution. Finally, CEA also has internship programs available to your students. In this program, students will complete an internship while studying at either one of CEA's 9 study centers or at one of CEA's many foreign partner institutions. Internships are available at all foreign language levels, including students who only speak English. Please visit our website for more information on CEA's study abroad internships. We'll now pass it off to Emily Sowie.
Hi everyone, this is Emily. I am the Student Advising Supervisor here at CEA Study Abroad. I have the great privilege of working with the enrollment team who you saw on a previous slide, and this team is working directly with your students. So today I'm going to review the experiences and the resources that are available to both you and your students during the pre-departure time. So your students' experience with CEA started by them working with a CEA admissions counselor. They'd worked with them to determine which program would fit both their academic and personal goals. They were directed to speak with academic advisors, study abroad advisors, and you to be fully prepared to apply for the correct program. Once they applied and were accepted into that program, your student then started working with their site specialist. Now, your student site specialist is your student's main point of contact from the time they were accepted into the program, basically until they get on the plane to get on to their study abroad experience. Your student site specialist reaches out to them through several different mediums: emails, text messages, phone, Facebook. Text message is always the most popular, but we really try to connect with them in any way that is best for them. They reach out to your students regularly to ensure that they are receiving both cultural and logistical preparation for their program abroad. Each site specialist is an expert in the programs that they advise, and in most cases, they've actually studied or lived in the location they've advised about. As I mentioned, they are your student's best resource at this time. Your student also has a personal student accounts advisor who is a great resource to figure out a tuition payment. From a customized payment plan to working with their school study abroad and financial aid office, this team is available to help support you and your student to create the best financial strategy. I would also like to highlight another amazing resource, which you can see on the screen in front of you. This is your student's MyCEA account. This is a student portal and an overview of all logistical and cultural preparation that your student needs to complete and before they leave for their program. So you can see on the screen, we have what's called a to-do list. This is basically a checklist that helps guide your student through all of the tasks that they need to complete before they leave. It also has a lot of cultural information under the Resources tab that you see on the far right. Lastly, you can see an invoice or make payments under the Payment Info tab. If you would like to review your student's MyCEA account, please ask them for their login information. Our goal is to help prepare you and your students for an excellent study abroad experience. If you have any questions about your student's program or any of the information that we cover here in the webinar, please don't hesitate to reach out to anyone on our team. We are very happy to help. Now, Liz Kaser, our Director of Student Affairs, is going to talk to you about some pre-departure conversations.
Thanks so much, Emily. Hello, everyone. It's so nice to be with you here today. I am your resource as CEA's Director of Student Affairs for all those questions about your student study abroad experience outside of the classroom. We know that students choose their study locations for many reasons. Maybe a parent or a sibling studied there. Maybe they visited on a family vacation or a school trip and wanted to go back. Perhaps no one in their family has studied abroad or traveled abroad, and they're the trailblazer. Or it's likely that their friends have highly recommended this city, or that they do have friends going abroad and they will be studying and traveling with those friends. As you and your student are reflecting about their study abroad opportunity, I would encourage you to have some very valuable conversations about what they expect from this experience. What are their goals for studying abroad? Is their goal to perfect their existing language skills or maybe acquire conversational skills in a new language? Is it to earn important credits for their degree program? Is it maybe to absorb a local culture and learn more about where their family members may have come from and their heritage? Is it a priority for them to travel as much as possible and absorb as many new cultures as possible? And then what are your expectations for them? Sharing those expectations are also important. Do you want to see them grow in their independence, to become more resilient? Do you want them to develop a more global perspective and experience a new culture on their own, seek out new and career skills, gain an international work experience? This kind of discussion will help you understand your students' priorities and also share with them your hopes. Preparing a budget for studying abroad will also be a valuable conversation to have. We know that this will not be the typical college student budget of books and organization dues and pizza. It's important to talk with your student about how much independent travel they hope to do. What about that once-in-a-lifetime trip that comes up that wasn't planned for? What about daily incidental expenses, like that daily coffee that your student's used to having? As your student is having those new eating and drinking experiences in their host city and in all the other places they visit, it may be more costly than their past university meal plan. You can anticipate a higher cost of living in most locations.
Thanks, Liz. And yes, this is the Liz from the famous Lessons from Liz, and she's going to be sharing great information with you throughout the rest of the term. And as Liz was mentioning budget, CEA provides actually a sample budget for each of your students' programs. Now, this budget was created based on data that we have collected from the past 3 years of students' participation and their average expenses. So we have both a low and a high end of the additional costs that your student might experience, be it that daily cup of coffee that Liz was talking about, personal travel, entertainment, course fees, etc. This can be found on our CEA website, or it can be found on your student's MyCEA account. Now, continuing with some of these pre-departure preparations, along with those conversations that Liz was just talking about, we want to review some additional suggestions and resources available to you. I would like to remind you of the CEA information sharing communities that have been created just for you. We have country-specific Facebook pages that serve as wonderful forums for information sharing, questions, and support with individuals who are going through similar experiences. These are great places for you to ask questions, share pictures, share experiences, and really form a community that will help everyone prepare. We'll also be sending emails with updates, and we actually also have a CEA blog for those of you who aren't on Facebook. It's important to note that individuals who are listed as your student's emergency contact will receive these emails and invitations. So if you are not listed as your student's emergency contact, please ask them to add you on their MyCEA account. I also want to highlight the family guide that is actually pictured on this screen. It was written by Elizabeth Cather, and this can be found on your family blog as well as the CEA website. And this is really an excellent overview and a great place to start for anyone who is a family member of a CEA student going abroad. Also, as just a last reminder, your CEA staff members here in Phoenix are here to help you and support you during this pre-departure process.
That's really important, Emily. I want to mention some of the feelings you might have as the study abroad experience becomes a reality for your students. New experiences can be stressful, and as you work through your students' preparations, there are going to be many challenges and frustrations you as a family member may experience. Class offerings that may change and your student discusses with you. Ticket prices may change before you actually book that flight. And then, of course, you worrying about them meeting others, them worrying about meeting others, and just the overall transition as they get closer to their departure date. We know that working through these difficulties will help your student become a stronger and more resilient person, and that they are able to better navigate these challenges and setbacks later in life because they have successfully overcome challenges in this pre-departure phase. Your feelings of concern, however, are only going to be magnified by the distance and all those new unknowns. While things will be exciting and new for your student, they will be stressful for you because you aren't familiar with the geographic location or the people that your student is now interacting with. But remember, from the first day they started school, you have helped prepare them, and they have learned things from you to succeed in new environments. As they have succeeded in college, they're also going to succeed in studying abroad. Prepare yourself if you're used to speaking with your student every day. Be prepared for some gaps in that communication and perhaps less regular communication in the beginning. Do set up a regular call time to help you and your student work around time differences and the busy schedules that you both have. Let your student know that you are going to worry a lot less about them when you have regular contact, rather than if they only call when they're feeling emotional, missing you, feeling frustrated, or have a particularly difficult challenge. Again, I encourage you to support our family groups to help you balance your feelings with the support of other parents going through the same experience and who have the same concerns.
Awesome. Thank you, Liz. Okay, now to the fun stuff, entry requirements. So this is a topic that we are actually working with your students on right now. I know that some of you have had the pleasure of attending a consulate appointment for a visa, and you know this can be a challenging process, but we are really here to support you. And so now I'm going to go over the entry requirements that your student might need to study abroad. So to study in a foreign country, each student must abide by the entry requirements dictated by that country. To start, every student must have a valid passport. Please work with your student to ensure that their passport is valid for at least 90 days after their program ends. Also, their passport needs to be in good condition. By that, I mean no rips, no pages missing, no extra writing. And it needs to be signed on the data page, as you can see in the example on the screen. Now, for the majority of our spring programs, local authorities require a student to obtain a visa for their study abroad process. A student visa is basically a contract between the student and the country in question that allows the student to stay in that country for a certain period of time to study. The student visa actually comes in the form of a sticker that is affixed on your student's passport. Now, each of these processes can vary, and believe me when I say I hear you, I know it can be a challenging process. I have my own war stories with the consulate, but please know that you have a lot of resources. You can reach out to your student site specialist at any time, review the visa guide that has been posted on the Facebook pages, review the videos that were posted on the Facebook pages. The visa guide can also be found in your student's MyCEA account. Now, it is important to note that if your student is planning on traveling to any additional countries outside of their host country, they will need to understand any entry requirements of that specific country. So it's important to do that research before they leave when they're talking about additional travel.
So this is Liz, and now I want to discuss a little bit more about your student's health. We've had a few Facebook posts discussing this topic, but for all of you who are new to this topic with CEA, you can see that we prioritize wellness for students, and that concept is present in our wellness wheel, discussing the 6 areas of wellness that we focus on during your student study abroad experience. It's important for your students to start with a healthy, positive state of being. If they're coming off a very hectic fall semester and have been fighting allergies or dealing with the flu before they depart, it can be more difficult for them. It's critical that they take some time to eat well, watch their caffeine, and catch up on their sleep before undertaking this international journey. If your student is starting the experience feeling unwell, it may be more difficult for them to get up to speed after arrival. Do check out the CDC's website for any immunizations that might be recommended for your student's host country or the countries they hope to visit. If your student is traveling to a mosquito-prone climate, be sure they pack an insect repellent with DEET, which is the most active and effective ingredient against mosquitoes. Those type of repellents can be very expensive on location. Also, to get the typical college-age boosters for meningitis and tetanus are also a good idea. Jet lag is real, and it can take up to about a week or for a person to adjust. Settling into a new routine and pacing themselves will help them transition to their new life on location. They don't need to see it all in the first week, and you can help remind them that as they arrive on site. All students adapt at their own speed, and you're likely going to hear about their progress through those various stages of cultural adaptation when they are sharing things online or in those calls about things that are exciting and new, frustrating and different, or when they're missing specific things about the U.S. And then as they near their return, making plans to return to that home country and travel more, maybe abroad. Your positive reinforcement of all of those aspects of their experience will help them understand that it's all important and they're making memories of a lifetime. They all present great learning experiences for your student. There's a great resource for cultural adaptation on your student's MyCEA account, which Emily referenced in the resource tab. After your student arrives, do encourage them to talk with the CEA staff at their study locations to help understand their feelings and be supported, especially as homesickness does creep in. These professionals have experience supporting students who are studying abroad. They understand the challenges of the transition in living abroad.
Absolutely, Liz. And I do want to piggyback just on how much our staff supports the students when they're on site. You can see the picture on the page in front of you. The students are rock climbing. Our staff really, it's important for them, for the students to stay healthy and well while they're abroad. So whatever that means to your student, whether it's joining a local Frisbee team or getting into hiking or understanding how locals stay healthy, that is something that our staff is happy and ready to do for your students.
So all of our students do have health insurance during the dates of their CEA program. This coverage begins with their start date and ends with their last date of their program. If your student is arriving early or staying after the program ends, they should acquire an independent health plan so that they are covered when they are not on their CEA program. I strongly advise looking online. Those short-term travel health plans are easy to find. Again, your student is only traveled by consolidated health plans for CEA students during the dates of their study program. Our CHP plan is a reimbursement style plan where students do pay upfront for their visit to a doctor or clinic and then file a claim to get their money back. Upfront costs are usually very reasonable, between 60 and 80 euros for a doctor's visit, less for a nurse practitioner, maybe more for a specialist. CEA staff can help students make those appointments and complete their claims forms. Reimbursements can take up to about 6 weeks, and those checks are sent back to the student's home address. So it's important that your student have funds set aside for any healthcare needs they may encounter. Maybe a designated credit card is a good idea. Students often put off going to the doctor if they think it's going to impact their budget for social activities. And we want to make sure that they do seek medical attention promptly. So please talk to your student about having a designated credit card for their health care. Your student will also have a CHP insurance card that they will use to file a claim. But unlike in the United States, they don't need to show that insurance card when they go into a medical provider's office. With socialized medicine, they'll be seen regardless. They need that insurance card for the number to file a claim later and receive their reimbursement.
And that card can be found on their MyCEA account about 2 to 3 weeks before they leave.
So let's talk a little more now about our students' safety while they're abroad. As you're doing pre-departure research, it's important to consider the location geographically of your student's host city, the size of it, understanding public transportation, understanding if it's a college town, if it's a very metropolitan, tourist-focused area, looking up the university where their classes will be held, reading some of the bios of the faculty at the CEA Center, checking out online blogs from students that are currently studying at that university. I also recommend looking up some expat newspapers, which are readily available in English for many major cities abroad. These newspapers will talk about current issues and life in the place through the eyes of Americans who have lived there for some time. Please do sign yourself and your student up at the U.S. State Department's Smart Traveler Enrollment Program, the STEP program, which provides you updates according to the countries that you indicate that you may be visiting or traveling to. This is important so that you can receive quick updates about safety situations and then also give your student a heads up if they are not monitoring those updates.
Exactly, and that is also a task on your student's MyCEA account, so very easy to find.
Thanks, Emily. We all understand that alcohol may have been a part of your student's college experience so far, and even for those students who have not used alcohol studying abroad, often they will adapt to the use as part of the culture. It's very attractive when going out into a new place and even more exciting when it's part of the French or Italian or Spanish Latin cultures. However, alcohol misuse or abuse can set a student up to be a victim of petty crime. like having their wallet stolen or their phone lifted from a pocket, or even a more serious crime like assault. Students are not always aware of the easy target that they present when they are going to clubs that cater to students and to American tourists. However, criminals know the areas and look for students who are alone or under the influence in these clubs when they leave. So please encourage your student to be vigilant, to reflect the cultural use of alcohol as opposed to the typical U.S. college student use of alcohol in their practice. And then if your student ever shares with you that they've been a victim of a crime, please direct them to the CEA staff so they can receive appropriate support and assistance to file a police report. This police reporting can be time-consuming and may not be what the student wants to do for an iPhone or for their wallet and a few credit cards which already have been canceled and are on their way to being replaced. But your encouragement to them will help them see the value in standing up for themselves and alerting authorities to the crimes that have taken place, and particularly in a location where they've been targeted. We're going to talk more about our mandatory orientations, which gives students really important information about safety. So we encourage you to talk to your student about attending and to also think about how they will conduct themselves abroad.
Absolutely, and just one quick plug for those mandatory orientations. The picture on your screen is an example of one. Here they give just great safety tips, practical tips that you wouldn't necessarily think of when you're here maybe on a Safe College campus in the United States, but so important for your students to go.
So an important topic that I want to talk with you all is our emergency protocols to make you aware that we do have very specific processes and tasks in place that we request students to follow in the event of any situation where our students may be impacted based on their location because they are traveling independently or because of the CEA location where they're being hosted. We have 4 steps. Students are educated about these steps and will be reminded of these in the event of any excursion or any independent travel they do. First, we always recommend the student get to a safe place or shelter in place, that they contact their emergency contact person. If that is you, then make sure you are aligned with phone numbers and you understand that your student would be contacting you first. We then ask them to connect with CEA, respond to any emergency messages that we've shared with them, and then, of course, ask them to follow the directions of local authorities who would either have control of the situation or the most updated information and directions for your student who might be close to the scene of an incident. Why do we ask them to connect with you as the emergency contact? Well, in the event that phone lines or online abilities are limited, later we can connect with you here in the United States and confirm that the student has been in touch with you and is safe. Whereas abroad, phone lines may be down or there may be overwhelmed systems. So we always want the student to contact first with their loved ones. Again, we have awareness of the challenges of the times and the risks that are present to all of us here in the U.S. and abroad. So I share with you the student emergency protocol so that you understand what students are told on site and what is repeated to them whenever they travel independently. We do request students to share their travel plans with us every weekend. This isn't to prevent them from going to any one location or to put any sort of censorship on their travel, but so that we're aware of where our students may be in the event that something happens over the weekend or when they are away from their CEA host site, that we can get in touch with them and advise them. We do monitor the U.S. State Department and work closely to stay abreast of whether travel alerts are inactive or travel warnings have been enacted. And we also coordinate with Europe Assistance, currently Global Generali Assistance. And you can find out more information about that partner through your student's MyCEA account.
Okay, now the really fun thing, cell phones. So this is one of our most common questions that we receive about your student study abroad program, and rightly so, because we know that you want to be able to communicate with your student while they're abroad. And so one thing that's very important to note, CEA requires that all students obtain a working phone with either international or local service and provide that number with our on-site staff within 5 days of the program starting. This is to ensure that our staff can reach the students in the event of an emergency, like Liz was just talking about. So now I'm going to go over 3 options that your students have for cell phones abroad. So option 1, using a current cell phone with a foreign SIM card. Some phone models accept foreign SIM cards. I'm pretty sure that most new phones accept them, but you can always check with your provider if your student's phone does. It's important to note if your student is going to use an international SIM card, they must unlock their phone. Your provider can do this for you. This must be completed before your students travel. Your student can then purchase an inexpensive SIM card when they arrive on site. With foreign SIM cards, they must purchase credit and then add additional credit as they use it. So it's kind of a pay-as-you-go system. This is a great way to keep track of their budget, and is generally a less expensive way to communicate. Many foreign SIM cards cannot support internet or apps, examples are et cetera on smartphones. This is primarily for local calls. So again, option 1 is to use the current unlocked cell phone with a foreign SIM card. Option 2 is to get a pay-as-you-go phone upon arriving on site. So pay-as-you-go phones are really widely used internationally and can be purchased very inexpensively at stores. So similar to option 1, they'll purchase credit and then add credit as they run out. Many students choose this option and then bring their US phone along with them and then keep it in airplane mode so they can have access to internet and Wi-Fi areas. So again, option 2 is to purchase a pay-as-you-go phone when they arrive on site. Option 3 is to use their regular US phone with an international plan. This can be very convenient. However, it can be very expensive. I know there are some competitive plans out there right now, so we encourage you to do a lot of research before committing to a plan just to make sure it's the best option for you. Our on-site staff can help your students answer questions about cell phones when they arrive. But as I mentioned, please ensure your student provides their cell phone number to the on-site staff within 5 days of arriving. This is a great time to do it at orientation, as Liz will talk about later, but it really is in their best interest so our staff can connect with them in the event of an emergency. There are also another great ways to share or to communicate free. So there are a lot of apps that you can see on the phone or on the screen right now: WhatsApp, Viber, FaceTime, and Skype. Those are all great options to communicate freely. You can video chat, you can text. So this is really nice, and your students can use them when they are in Wi-Fi areas, which is going to be at their housing, at their university, etc.
So Emily, that's really great information. And one thing to mention about phones and tagging onto the possibility that your student may lose a phone or have a phone stolen. They need to replace that phone as soon as possible so that we do have the ability to contact them via phone. It's also important that they understand they will learn how to dial internationally as they travel from country to country. It's one thing to be able to dial you from their home country or their host city. It's another thing to need to reach back to their CEA staff because of a challenge they've experienced with a train schedule or a delayed flight, and they're not going to make it back for class on Monday. They need to know how to dial from different countries back to their host country. We know that's been challenging at times, and students don't understand why they're not getting through or why the staff aren't picking up because the call is not connecting. Lastly, I strongly encourage you not to ship electronics to your students. They will be held up in customs. There will be duty fees to pay. And if a student loses that smartphone, it's best to wait and try and replace it once they return to the United States. Have them get a to-go phone or a really basic replacement phone there on site, rather than have that phone that may be likely held up in customs or they have to pay a duty fee on. Electronics are very challenging to ship internationally.
Agreed. And lastly, just as we wrap up, I know I just told you a lot of information. I will post it on the Facebook page later this week. Very, very important. Students cannot rely on Wi-Fi alone. While Wi-Fi is common and is becoming more common internationally, they will get in a situation where they don't have Wi-Fi, so they must have an alternative form of communication.
Okay, so we're going to switch gears and talk about some packing tips. And specifically, I want to talk about what to carry on and what to pack separately. Carrying on involves going through customs and having your carry-on looked at, and that's important because we want your student to travel very transparently. They have nothing to hide. They should have nothing that they should be worried about. They should take their medications clearly labeled in the bottle which they are prescribed in. They should have a letter from their doctor explaining that prescription, how it's used, and what exactly is the formulation. Those brand name drugs are not recognizable across all countries, so we want your medications to be carried on and very clearly labeled in the bottle in which they were prescribed. Drugs and Ziploc baggies get attention here, so we want to keep them in the bottle. Electronics, as I mentioned, electronics should be carried on to where they can be examined by customs. We don't want to have those packed in a suitcase where they could be subject to holds. Arrival documents, your students need to keep their passport with them, easily accessible, and then also have copies of those documents in a separate location where they can also refer to those as needed. And it may be a little unconventional for students who are traveling and are used to modern conveniences, but having a change of clothes in case their suitcase is delayed can help them arrive and feel more confidence, like, okay, my suitcase is going to show up within the next 24 hours, and I do have makeup, I do have comfortable clothes, I do have things that are going to get me by until that time when my suitcase arrives, if it's delayed.
Absolutely. One thing that I will add on for you, Liz, for arrival documents, there's a very important document called the arrival card, which is found on your student's MyCEA account. This is basically just a small page document that has the contact information and what to do in the event of an emergency if their plane gets delayed, for example. It's on their MyCEA account. Have them print that out. You keep a copy and your student keep a copy as well. Now, when deciding what to pack, CEA suggests that students bring one large suitcase, one backpack, and one carry-on. That may seem like not a lot amount, but there are a lot of ways where you can keep that to a limited amount of things to pack. So in deciding what to pack, we encourage you to research the climate of your student's city. With that being said, the best advice that we have for you is to pack in layers. Students should plan several outfits with the same clothes. They will have laundry facilities on site, but layering will save them. Keep in mind that when visiting religious institutions, there are dress codes. So no bare shoulders, for example. So keeping that in mind when they're packing. Also, tennis shoes and flip-flops are not as common in other countries, and so we encourage you maybe to leave those at home, but it is essential to bring walking shoes. Heels are not your friend when you are walking on those cobblestone streets, so bring walking shoes. They will likely have a walking distance to commute to and from school and exploring new places. Lastly, we encourage your students to leave anything at home that is irreplaceable. CEA does not provide personal property insurance, so we encourage you to look into personal property insurance that will cover items that your students will likely bring, like a computer, a cell phone, a camera, but any jewelry, anything that can't be replaced, leave it at home. Now we're going to be talking about life on location. So we don't know, have you thought about what your students' first few days on their program will be like? How will they adjust to their new life abroad? What will it be like when they get off the plane? Now we're going to talk about what arrival will look like and how we can help your student prepare for it. First, your student needs to arrive on your program start date, which can be found on the CEA website, on the MyCEA account, or calling their site specialist. Please note this is not the day that classes will start. They just need to arrive in their city. You can see on the screen airport codes and the time that they need to arrive by. So please keep that in mind. One of my favorite resources that our on-site staff provides for your student is airport pickup. It's so great to see a friendly face in a new airport in the haze of jet lag. To qualify for airport pickup, your student does need to arrive at the airport before the cutoff time. They need to enter their flight information on their MyCEA account, and they need to live in CEA housing. They meet these requirements, a CEA representative will be at the airport to greet them. Our staff wears bright orange t-shirts like you can see on the screen, literally impossible to miss. If your student's baggage is misplaced by the airline, like Liz was mentioned, our staff will help them fill out a lost luggage claim before they leave the airport. But please remember, we can try to help facilitate that process, but we cannot control how quickly that is delivered to the student. If your student's flight is delayed, all they need to do is look on the arrival card that I mentioned. Contact information for the on-site staff is on that card, along with steps for what they need to do next. Your student will then be taken to their living arrangement and ensured they're settled in. They'll be shown around their new home, given a calendar for the next couple days. And at this point, your student's on-site staff is their best and main resource for the next part of their program.
As we discussed in the student safety information, it's very important that your student attend that on-site arrival orientation. Critical information is going to be shared with your student to enable their success, whether it's about their student activities that are planned during arrival, excursions that they have paid for, classes, settling into their housing if they're in CEA housing, even if they're not in CEA housing, what to expect culturally regarding quiet laws and living in a new community. Specifically, these sessions are mandatory because we want students to be advised on places to avoid, ways to stay safe, how not to get pickpocketed, the recommended taxi services that won't take them the long way around and overcharge them as students. Do have a plan with your student on when they will let you know they've arrived, and then understand that due to jet lag or that orientation and the many things they have to do to settle in, that they may not be back in contact with you. As they are adapting and they're using you as a sounding board for their feelings and their frustration, just be aware that their expectations, that romantic vision they had of their location, that their apartment, their neighborhood may not match that ideal picture, and you can help them overcome and adjust better to being on site by listening and giving them positive reinforcement that this is a great thing that they're doing and they're going to learn a lot from that experience. So now we're going to refer back to Ashley to talk a little bit about academics on location.
Hello again. Regarding academics on site, we're going to discuss policies, special accommodations, cultural challenges in the classroom, and transcripts. So regardless of your student's program, there will be an attendance policy that your student will be held accountable to throughout their program. However, this attendance policy may differ from that of the student's home institution. For example, excessive absences can negatively affect your student's final course grade. Traveling will not be considered an acceptable reason for missing class, so if you're planning on visiting your students during their program, please review their calendar to make sure your plans coincide with your students' courses. From here, I would like to discuss academic opportunities available outside of the classroom. The picture on the slide, for example, was taken at our Great Masters course in Florence, Italy, where students have class sessions at places like Uffizi and Duomo Museum. We also have opportunities for students to volunteer with local organizations and/or attend a CEA-organized event with local students to improve their foreign language skills. Several partner institutions also offer academic opportunities outside of the classroom, like intramural sports or organized extracurricular activities. Now I would like to discuss special accommodations at CEA. If your student is currently receiving special accommodations at their home institution, it is important that your student apply for special accommodations with CEA as soon as possible. Special accommodations include extended testing times, a private testing environment, use of an in-class audio recording device, and etc. Please note that due to cultural standards, CEA cannot guarantee that special accommodations will be granted by all of our foreign partner institutions. Therefore, please ensure your student does not delay in requesting special accommodations. Please also note that special accommodations will not be granted retroactively. Regardless of program options, there are unique challenges faced by students as they grow accustomed to new learning environments. For instance, many of our foreign partner institutions and CEA study centers are located in the middle of large cities, which can be a very different experience for some. We encourage you to discuss this new environment with your students and continue to remind them that while they are in a foreign environment, they are still attending an academic program. In particular, students should understand the different cultural norms surrounding academics while they are abroad. The pace, style, rules, and rigor of the classroom may be more strict and formal than students are accustomed to in the United States. Our CEA staff will be there to support your students, but it is important for them to learn and adapt to the rules put forward by their academic staff abroad.
That's important, Ashley, for our students to understand that even arriving to class late, a student may be denied entry to the class by a professor in a partner institution or as part of a hybrid program. Very different policy and thought about attendance and arriving to class.
That's a great reminder, Liz. Thank you for sharing. The last academic component I want to discuss is student study abroad transcripts. Once students complete their study abroad program, CE will release their transcripts as indicated on their CEA application. In the vast majority of cases, students choose to have their transcripts mailed to their home institution in order to have study abroad credits transfer. It is important to note that transcripts are released within 90 days of a student's program end date. It is also important to note that credit transfer decisions are ultimately at the discretion of the student's home institution. The EA therefore strongly recommends that students keep copies of the syllabi for all courses completed while abroad so that they may provide these syllabi to their home institution if requested for credit transfer. In order for your student's transcripts to be released, your student must be in good financial standing with the EA. If a financial hold is present on your student's account, their transcripts will not be released until this hold is cleared. Students can check their MyCEA account to review whether they have a financial hold and whether their transcripts have been released yet. If your student has any questions regarding the transcript process, please have them reach out to their site specialist or email transcripts@ceastudyabroad.com directly. I will now pass off to Elizabeth Cather again to discuss expectations of student life on location.
Okay, so we're going to wind up now with just a few comments on what your student can expect with life on location. Specifically housing, understanding it's where your student will be nesting in their home base, whether they're in a homestay family, a residencia environment, or in their own apartment with CEA or independently. Housing is going to differ greatly when it comes to the size of the apartment, whether it's the windows that don't have screens, the heights of the ceiling, or the idea that you don't wear your shoes inside and keep noise down to a minimum so you don't disturb your neighbors. Clothes dryers are not common abroad, so your student will get used to using clothes racks and hanging clothes outside. Laundry facilities can be found to do laundry and laundromats that offer clothes dryers, but it may not be close or it may not be as convenient as your student using that washer that's provided in their apartment. Emily, what would you like to say about commuting?
Commuting is very common in all of our locations. Depending on the location, students can travel between 10 and 40 minutes from their housing to their wherever they're taking classes. This is all part of the experience of living in a new country. For example, a common commute time for anyone, not even a student, anyone living in Paris is 45 minutes, kind of like living in New York. So this is just part of the experience and something that students get used to. Public transportation is very manageable in a lot of our locations, and our staff ensure that our students are very confident using this, specifically during that orientation time that Liz talked about.
So if your student has not used public transportation in the past in their college town or in your home city, encourage them to be optimistic about it because it's much more common abroad. On-site teams provide maps of the city and help students be aware of safe places to explore their surroundings, shortcuts to take, and just in general, help them adjust to living in a city. Whereas the initial crowds and public transportation and noise could be intimidating for some, we encourage them to use their on-site staff as a resource. They have techniques and tips to get them through adjusting to this new environment.
Absolutely. And if I can get around in Barcelona or Paris on public transportation, believe me, anyone can. So food, the good stuff, and my favorite topic. When I studied abroad, my eyes were open to culinary awesomeness all around the country. And we know with our students in this foodie culture, experiencing food is so important. So discovering food, drink, and the culture surrounding this will be an experience unto itself. With that being said, we encourage you to speak with your student about budgets and expectations, like Liz was talking about, when they're eating out. Something to note, eating habits tend to travel internationally. So if your student likes to cook at home, they'll probably like to cook abroad. This is the great thing about they'll have about their housing internationally. They'll have kitchens, they'll have fresh markets, and their on-site staff can show them where the best place is to shop and really keep themselves healthy.
Now, of course, there will be a few things they can't get abroad, and we're aware of students that die for peanut butter and need to have that mailed in their care packages. We really encourage you to keep care packages to a minimum, and that's based on the cost and the difficulty in shipping through customs. Again, please don't ship electronics, and also it is not possible to ship medication internationally. I know here in the United States we can receive autofill prescriptions, but that's our domestic mailing policies. You cannot ship medication internationally. before mailing a package to your student, talk with them about what they actually need and how quickly they need it, and ask them to check in with their on-site staff as to the best way to receive that item that they absolutely must have mailed to them.
All right, so that was great. Thank you all for presenting that great information. We've had a lot of questions come in on the chat queue, so I'm going to allow just a couple of minutes for that. One of the questions that came through is, do we provide clothes racks? So I know, Liz, you had mentioned that dryers aren't very common in much of CEA housing, but are there racks for them to dry their clothes on?
Yes. All apartments will have clothes racks as part of the appliance package. There are also clotheslines available in common laundry rooms. Some residencies even have outside courtyards where clotheslines are available. Some students in the homestay situations, when they have arranged to have the homestay family take care of their laundry, will dry those clothes for them on those clotheslines. Definitely, without a clothes dryer, your student will still have access to be able to dry their clothes. It just requires a little more planning, because what you want to wear will not be immediately available to you after a 30-minute dry cycle.
Yeah, this is true. I remember when I studied abroad, that was the case. Okay, next question. They're wondering when we can expect site-specific calendars, if those exist.
Absolutely. Great question. So these actually exist right now. They can be found on your student's MyCEA account in the While You're Abroad tab. They can also be found on the CEA website. And those are updated, they're dynamic calendars. So as soon as we get more information from the on-site staff about specific excursions or school breaks, they can be found immediately. So again, on the CEA website, as well as your student's MyCEA account.
And that's a great segue into our next question, Emily, is where can students find out about excursions, and are any included in the program fee?
Great question. There are several excursions and cultural activities included in the program cost. These can be found as soon as they're scheduled. They will be found on the program calendar. Examples of excursions that your student might take that have been done in previous terms can also be found on the website. As soon as those are defined and determined and scheduled, your students will be notified through the program calendar. But one of my favorite parts of our programs, the excursions, the cultural activities, a great way to experience a place with more of a local look, and all of that information can be found on our website.
Perfect. All right, on to school and academics. Number one, do they need to bring school supplies, and where or how do they purchase textbooks abroad if they're needed?
And so they will be able to get notebooks, pens, pencils, all of that abroad. A lot of students also bring computers. Please note there will be computer labs as well in the CEA centers as well as the partner institutions. So bringing school supplies will not be necessary. If they need to bring a book, it really depends on the program. They will be notified well in advance so that they can purchase those on Amazon or however they would like to purchase those and bring them. A lot of our CEA centers have lending libraries where they can just rent the textbook for the semester. So it depends on the program. Check with your student site specialist, but you will be given ample time to do that before they leave.
Can you talk a little bit more about airport pickups for students that are in non-CEA housing?
Sure. And so what we do, our on-site staff, like I said, bright orange shirts, can't miss them if they arrive on the program start date. So if they do, we encourage them to go and check in with the staff, say, hey, I'm here, and then they can, if they need help directing them to a safe taxi or public transportation, our staff can do that at that time. Our staff will also connect with your student if they're choosing to not do CEA housing before they arrive. This way they can give them the schedule for orientation, they can let them know all of the resources, like how to communicate with them, things like that before they arrive. And so they'll have that information before, but if they arrive on the program start date, but they're not living in CEA housing, have them find the staff, check in, and then they can direct them to a way to get to their housing.
And just to tag off that, Emily, that is so important that your student checks in with the CEA staff on the day they arrive at the airport. Our staff are there. If they're arriving on that arrival date, we really want to know that they made it safely and not have that question hanging while we hope they show up to orientation. So please, even if your student is in independent housing, they're still a CEA program student. They still have the support and the connection to our staff. And we want to make sure that we meet them and greet them and then connect them with the best transportation option to get to their independent housing.
Absolutely, perfect. All right, I think we have time for just about 2 more questions. One is academic related. What happens if students cannot get into the classes they need?
It's a really good question. I'll speak to that. Again, depending on the program that they have applied to, there are different opportunities for add drop, okay? So I'll speak to a CEA center. When courses are released, there is an add drop period, and there's also an add drop period when the student arrives on site, similar to what they have at their university, where they can add and drop those courses. With that being said, it is so important to get a first and a second choice course approved by their academic advisor in the event they cannot get into their preferred course.
Right. And just to reiterate, our CEA centers abroad are set up very similarly to U.S. universities, so students will have some familiarity with that, but it will be very different with the partner institutions, and our staff and team members can help work through that process with them. And the last question is, what do you recommend is the best way for students to carry money and valuables abroad, and how do they get money abroad?
Absolutely. So I can speak a little bit to how you get money. The best way or the easiest way for students to get money is through an ATM. So conversations with your bank before your student leaves is imperative so that they don't shut down their card. But ATMs are very, very common internationally, and so your student can just withdraw money from there. It's important to note that the fees associated with that can be high, so speak to your bank and understand that. One way to avoid that is maybe to withdraw more money at one time, but then not carry that money around. Keep it in a safe place in their housing and only use the money, carry the money that they need for that day.
And just to tag off that was Emily saying, do let your bank know that your student has travel plans. And as your student is traveling abroad to Spain for their host city, if the student is then traveling from Spain to also the Czech Republic or on to France or Italy, the student needs to update the bank according to their travel plans, because banks watch that, and we don't want to have a student ever not have access to their account because their travel is deemed unexpected and, you know, possible representation of someone taking their banking card. Yeah. It is a very cash-based society abroad, whereas here students are used to having their debit card and the ease of everything with a swipe. They're going to find it much easier to deal with things with cash, and that we've slowly caught up to the chip processing, but abroad, cards with a chip are much more preferred. You can still use your regular slide card. We've even had a couple places take an imprint of my card, but by far the chip technology is much more embraced abroad, where they have many more concerns about identity theft and cards that are stolen and forged.
Last thing to note about money, make sure to get some cash before your student leaves. Get it from your bank. Exchange rates in the airports are astronomical, so just go to your bank, order euros, whatever it is that your student is going to be using. We recommend getting about $100 to $150 worth of that local currency so they can use that during the first phase when they're on site.
And definitely make sure to order that well in advance of the departure date, because it can take anywhere up to a couple of business days to a couple of weeks. Not all banks carry that on hand. So just to wrap up and be respectful of everybody's time, these are your key takeaways from today. Make sure to use the resources available to you and to help set proper expectations, not just for you and your students' experience, but for them and their experience as well. And everything that CEA is doing is to help promote the student-independent experience and to help them learn and grow throughout this experience. So these resources for you are there to make sure that you guys can help your students become those independent leaders that we know that they want to become. Make sure to develop a communication plan. Make sure to talk about make sure to talk about what to do in case of an emergency. Discuss and agree to a budget prior to departure. Review who your students' on-site contacts are. And just remember, most importantly, to enjoy the experience. And if possible, visit your student while they're abroad. It's a lot of fun. So we want to thank you guys for your participation today. If you have any questions, do feel free to reach out to us. And just as a reminder, we will send out the recording and all the questions that were asked to check you. So thank you again, everyone. We hope you have a wonderful day, and we'll look forward to talking to you soon.
Thank you.
Bye-bye now.